Days blended together in the white cell. John lost track of how many tests he had endured. The temperature chamber became just one of many tortures. The aliens had exposed him to sounds that made his ears bleed. They had placed him in rooms where gravity changed, crushing him under his own weight until his bones nearly broke. They had kept him awake for days using bright lights and loud noises. Through it all, John remained silent, giving them nothing but his name and prisoner number when asked. Today, 2 guards came for him again. John noticed they kept more distance from him now. The aliens seemed confused by his continued resistance. As they walked down the long white hallway, John heard sounds from other cells, moans, whimpers, strange clicking noises from non-human prisoners. He was not the only test subject on this ship. They passed a new section he hadn't seen before. Through a large window, John saw another human, a woman with short brown hair wearing the same gray clothes as him. She was sitting on the floor of a room filled with strange objects. An alien stood nearby, pointing at the objects and speaking to her. The woman looked up as John passed. Their eyes met briefly before the guards pushed him forward. Another human. John felt a spark of hope for the first time in weeks. He wasn't alone. The guards brought him to a different room today. No metal table or painful machines waited for him. Instead, the room looked almost comfortable. It had a soft chair, a small table with food and water, and walls that showed moving pictures of earth-green forests, blue oceans, city skylines. For a moment, John thought they had decided to treat him better. Then Commander Vexler entered. "Sit, human," the alien said, pointing to the chair. John sat slowly, watching Vexler with careful eyes. The commander stood on the other side of the table, those red glass eyes studying him. "Your physical resilience is remarkable," Vexler said. "You have survived tests that broke others. Our data suggests humans are stronger than we first believed." John said nothing. He didn't trust this sudden praise. "But physical strength is not what truly interests us," Vexler continued. "We need to understand the human mind. Today we begin the psychological tests." The door opened, and Lieutenant Kivra entered, carrying a small metal box. She placed it on the table between John and Vexler. "In this container is a neural device," Vexler explained. "It will create images in your mind, things that seem real but are not. We will measure your emotional responses." John looked at the box but didn't reach for it. "You may choose to cooperate and put the device on willingly," Vexler said, "or we will force it on you. The experience will be less painful. If you cooperate," John knew he had no real choice. Fighting would waste energy he needed to survive. He opened the box. Inside was what looked like a thin metal headband. He picked it up and placed it on his head. It felt cold against his skin. "Very good," Vexler said. The alien touched something on its wrist, and the headband tightened, pressing against John's temples. "The test begins now." The room around John faded. Suddenly, he was standing on a street in his hometown. Everything looked normal at first: houses, trees, blue sky. Then the sky darkened. Huge alien ships appeared, just like the day of the invasion. But this time, instead of capturing people, the ships fired bright beams that destroyed everything they touched. Buildings exploded, trees burned. People ran screaming. John knew it wasn't real. He had lived through the real invasion. It hadn't happened like this. He focused on his breathing, reminding himself this was just a test. The scene changed. Now, he stood in front of his sister's house where Amy had been staying. The house was in ruins. John felt his heart rate spike despite knowing it was fake. He forced himself to stay calm. This was what they wanted: to find his weaknesses, the things he cared about. "Dad?" A small voice came from behind him. John didn't turn around. It wasn't real. Amy was safe. This was just the aliens trying to break him. "Dad, please help me. It hurts." John closed his eyes. The voice sounded exactly like Amy. For a moment, doubt crept in. What if this was real? What if they had found Amy and brought her here? No, he had to trust his instincts. This was a trick. The neural device was creating these images, these sounds. He reached up and touched the metal band on his head, reminding himself where he really was. The scene changed again. John was back in the room with Vexler, but something was different. The alien looked older somehow, the black shells duller. "It has been 5 years, John Miller," Vexler said. "Earth has forgotten you. Your daughter is grown now. She believes." "You abandoned her?" John almost laughed. 5 years? He had been counting days. Unless they had kept him unconscious for a long time, this was another lie. "We can show you proof," Vexler said, as if reading his thoughts. "We have monitored Earth communications. No one is looking for you anymore." John stayed silent. He noticed something about the vision. Vexler's assistant wasn't there. In the real room, Kivra had been standing nearby. This confirmed it was all fake. The room faded again. More scenes played in John's mind. Earth accepting alien rule. Humans working as slaves. Amy growing up hating her father for disappearing. Through each vision, John held on to one thought. None of this is real. When the test finally ended, the headband released its tight grip. John found himself back in the actual room. Vexler and Kivra were looking at a screen, speaking in their clicking language without using the translation device. They seemed frustrated. "Your mind is unusually resistant," Vexler finally said, turning back to John. "Most subjects believe the visions are real. They break down, reveal their fears and weaknesses. You did not." John looked directly at the alien commander. "I know what's real." Vexler made that clicking sound again, possibly laughter, possibly annoyance. "We will find what breaks you, human. Everyone has a breaking point." As the guards led John back to his cell, he passed the room with the female prisoner again. She was alone now, writing something on the wall with her finger. She looked up as John passed, and this time she nodded slightly to him. A message? A sign of solidarity? John wasn't sure, but it gave him strength. Back in his cell, John lay on his bed, thinking about the other human. Was she undergoing the same tests? Had she found ways to resist too? He needed to find a way to communicate with her that night. As the lights dimmed to their lowest setting, John heard a soft sound outside his cell. He looked up to see the smaller alien he had noticed before, the one with lighter shells. It stood by his door, looking in through the small window. When it saw John watching, it didn't run away this time. Instead, it placed something on the floor just outside the door and pushed it underneath with a thin metal tool. When the alien left, John went to check what it had left. A small piece of fruit, nothing from Earth, but fresh food nonetheless. Better than the tasteless nutrition blocks they usually gave him. John smiled for the first time in weeks. The temperature tests hadn't broken him. The gravity tests hadn't broken him. The neural visions hadn't broken him. And now, it seemed, one of the aliens might be on his side. He ate the fruit slowly, savoring each bite. Tomorrow would bring new tests, new pain. But tonight, John had two small victories. Another human who acknowledged him and an alien who showed him kindness. In this prison of white walls and cruelty, that was enough to keep hope alive. John Miller stared at the white ceiling of his cell. 30 days? It had been 30 days since the aliens took him from his home. He counted each day by scratching small marks on the underside of his metal bed frame where the cameras couldn't see. The marks were his secret, his way of holding on to time when the aliens tried to take it from him. The Kurzak had come to Earth 6 months ago. Their ships darkened the skies over every major city. Humanity fought back, but their weapons were too weak against alien technology. After 2 weeks of fighting, Earth surrendered. The Kurzak didn't kill everyone like people feared. Instead, they said humans would serve a better purpose as test subjects. John had been working on rebuilding a house in his neighborhood when they took him. The alien ship appeared without warning. A beam of light froze everyone in place. John watched, unable to move, as the tall, black-shelled creatures walked among the humans, examining them like items in a store. One of them stopped in front of John. Its eyes were like dark red glass, and it had no mouth that John could see. It reached out with a 3-fingered hand and pressed something against John's neck. Then darkness came. He woke up in this cell. White walls, white floor, white ceiling. A bed, a toilet, and a small sink. Nothing else. The air smelled clean but strange, like hospitals and metal. The lights never turned off completely. just dimmed slightly during what John guessed was night. Today the door to his cell slid open. 2 Kurzak guards stood there, their black shells shining under the lights. Behind them was a taller alien wearing some kind of red mark on its shell. John had learned this meant a leader or scientist. Human subject 347, the tall one said. Its voice came from a small device on what might be its chest. The voice sounded flat, without emotion. You will come with us now. John stood up slowly. He had been a combat medic in the army before becoming a construction worker. His training taught him to stay calm, observe everything, and look for any chance to escape. So far he had seen nothing but his cell and these 3 aliens. The guards didn't touch him, but they carried long metal rods that John knew could deliver painful electric shocks. He had seen them use the rods on another prisoner who tried to run. The aliens led him down a long hallway. The walls were the same white as his cell, but with strange symbols glowing in blue light. Other doors lined the hall, and John wondered if humans were behind them too. They entered a large room filled with equipment. Tables with straps, machines with screens, containers filled with colored liquids. John felt his heart beat faster, but he kept his face calm. Show no fear, he told himself. Give them nothing. The tall alien pointed to a metal table in the center of the room. Lie down, human subject. John didn't move. Small acts of resistance were all he had. Lie down, or we will force you, the alien said. After a few seconds, John walked to the table and lay down. Cold metal pressed against his back through the thin gray clothes they had given him. The guards quickly attached straps across his chest, arms, and legs. The tall alien moved to stand over him. I am Commander Wexler, Chief Science Officer of this vessel. You are part of an important experiment to prove the fundamental weakness of your species. John said nothing. He stared at the ceiling, focusing on his breathing like he'd learned in the army. The Kurzak High Council believes humans are physically and mentally inferior to most species in the galaxy. Wexler continued, You're emotional. Complexity is your greatest weakness. You feel too much. It makes you unstable and unpredictable. A machine whirred to life beside the table. A screen lowered from the ceiling, stopping just above John's face. Today we begin the physical testing phase. We will record your responses to various stimuli. Your reactions will help us understand how to better control humans. John closed his eyes briefly. In his mind he saw his daughter Amy's face. She was living with his sister now, hopefully safe. Before the invasion, Amy had given him a small gift for his birthday, a tiny metal disc that played a recording of her voice saying she believed in him. He had hidden it inside a false tooth after the invasion started, worried that valuable items would be taken. The aliens had searched him when he arrived but found nothing. That small disc was his secret strength. The other test subjects broke quickly, Wexler said. The Draxi from the water planets lasted 12 days before begging for death. The Vorn warriors from the outer systems lasted 16 days before their minds shattered. How long will you last, human? John finally spoke. As long as I need to. The alien made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. Interesting, the others said similar things at first. A smaller alien entered the room, carrying a tray of instruments. This one had lighter colored shells and moved more quickly. This is Lieutenant Kivra, my assistant, Wexler said. She specializes in pain response studies. Kivra placed the tray beside John and picked up something that looked like a thin silver pen. Commander, the temperature test is prepared. Wexler moved to a control panel. We will begin with temperature tolerance. The chamber will become very cold, then very hot. We will measure how long until you beg for relief. The straps released. Suddenly, and before John could move, the floor beneath the table opened. He fell into a smaller room below. The opening sealed shut above him. The new chamber was barely bigger than his body, forcing him to stand with his arms at his sides. Temperature decreasing now, Wexler's voice came through a speaker. Current temperature is 20 degrees Celsius, normal for humans. John felt the air grow colder. His breath began to fog in front of his face. The walls of the chamber turned white with frost. His fingers and toes began to hurt, then grow numb. -10 degrees Celsius, the voice announced. Most species begin showing severe distress at this point. John closed his eyes. He thought of hot summer days working construction. The warmth of coffee in the morning, Amy's smile. He retreated into his mind as his body shivered uncontrollably. -20 degrees Celsius? Fascinating. Your vital signs show stress, but you remain conscious. John's teeth chattered. Ice formed on his eyebrows and lashes. He couldn't feel his hands or feet anymore. But still, he didn't cry out. Just as darkness began to edge into his vision, the temperature suddenly changed. Heat flooded the chamber. The ice melted, soaking his clothes, then quickly evaporating as the temperature rose higher. 40 degrees Celsius, Wexler announced. Now increasing to 50, sweat poured down John's face and body. The air became hard to breathe, like an oven. His lungs burned with each breath. The walls of the chamber glowed red with heat. 60 degrees Celsius. Your skin should be blistering now. John leaned against the wall, then jerked away as the hot surface burned him. He slid to the floor, fighting to stay conscious. In his mind, he heard Amy's voice from the recording. I believe in you, Dad. You're the strongest person I know. When the chamber finally opened, John was still awake. Barely but awake. The guards lifted him back to the main room and strapped him to the table again. His skin was red and raw in places, his lips cracked from the extreme temperatures. Vex single quotes Lar leaned over him, those red glass eyes studying him closely. Impressive, human. Most subjects lose consciousness during the first test. You may be more interesting than we anticipated. John looked directly at the alien. Is that all you've got? His voice was rough, his throat dry, but the words were clear. For the first time, Wexler seemed uncertain. The alien stepped back slightly. Take the subject back to his cell. Increase monitoring. We will continue tomorrow. As the guards led him back, John noticed something new, a small alien watching from a doorway. This one was shorter than the others, with lighter colored shells. It quickly disappeared when it saw John looking at it. Back in his cell, John collapsed on his bed. His body ached everywhere, but something burned inside him stronger than pain. They had tried to break him today. They had failed, and somehow he sensed that wasn't what they expected. Under his bed frame, John added another mark. Day 31, he would survive day 32 as well, and every day after that until he found a way home. John woke to alarms blaring throughout the ship. The white lights in his cell flashed red. He sat up quickly, alert and ready. Something was wrong. This wasn't part of any test he had experienced before. The door to his cell slid open. Instead of the usual guards, the small alien with light-colored shells stood there. Up close, John could see it was shorter than the others, with thinner limbs and smaller red eyes. Human John, the alien said in a quiet voice. Its translator device sounded different from the others, less mechanical, more natural. You must come with me now, quickly. John hesitated. Was this another test? Please, the alien said. Commander Wexler is busy with the emergency. This is our chance. John decided to trust his instincts. He stood and followed the small alien into the hallway. Red lights flashed everywhere. In the distance, he could hear the sounds of aliens, running and shouting in their clicking language. What's happening? John asked. Engine malfunction, the alien explained as they hurried down a corridor John had never seen before. Nothing dangerous, but it requires all senior officers to manage. I am HFY, Junior Science Officer. I have been watching you. You're the one who left me the fruit, John said. HFY's head moved in what might have been a nod. I do not agree with these experiments. Before the war, I studied human culture. Your people make beautiful things, music, stories, art. Breaking you serves no purpose. They reached a junction where 3 hallways met. HFY checked each direction before leading John down the left path. Where are we going? John asked. To meet the other human, HFY said. She has asked about you many times. She knows things that might help you survive. They reached a section of the ship that looked different from the testing areas. The walls here were darker, with more alien writing glowing on surfaces. MyVTalk stopped at a door and pressed a sequence of symbols on a panel beside it. "You have 10 minutes, MyVTalk said as the door slid open. "I will watch for guards." John stepped into the room. It was larger than his cell, with tables covered in strange objects. The woman he had seen before stood near a window that looked out into space. She turned as he entered. "So you're the one they can't break," she said. Her voice sounded rough, like she hadn't used it much. "I'm Susan Green." "John Miller," he replied. "How long have you been here?" "About 2 months," Susan said. "They took me from a research facility. I was studying human behavior and trauma. Ironic, right? Now I'm living what I used to study." John nodded. "The small alien MyVTalk said you know things that could help me." Susan moved closer, speaking quietly. "They're planning something bigger for you. I've been watching them through a crack in my wall. They're bringing in leaders from other ships to see you." "Why me?" John asked. "Because you're not breaking." Susan explained. "The other alien prisoners gave up weeks ago. But you keep resisting. It's making Vexler look bad to his superiors. They expected all humans to be weak." John thought about this. "So what happens next?" Susan pointed to the objects on the tables. "These are their research tools. I've been studying them when they bring me here for tests. The Kurzak are studying our emotions because they don't understand them. Their brains are different. They feel things simply, directly. Anger, fear, dominance. They don't understand complex emotions like hope, love, forgiveness." "How does that help us?" John asked. Susan picked up a small device that looked like a silver disc. "This is part of a neural link more advanced than the headband they used on you. They're planning to connect their minds directly to yours. They want to feel what you feel during the tests, to prove humans feel pain and fear more intensely than other species." John felt a chill run through him. "They want to be in my head?" "Yes, but that's where they might make a mistake," Susan said with a hint of a smile. "Their brains aren't equipped to handle the complexity of human emotions. If you can focus on the right feelings when they connect, you might overwhelm their systems." "What feelings?" John asked. "The ones they don't understand. Hope in the face of suffering. Love for people you miss. Even forgiveness toward them, your captors. These emotions confused the scientists when they studied my brain scans." John thought about his daughter Amy, the message hidden in his tooth. He had been focusing on those thoughts to survive, but never considered they might be a weapon. The door slid open, and MyVTalk hurried in. "You must return now. The emergency is ending. Guards will be back soon." Susan quickly grabbed John's arm. "One more thing, the Kurzak communicate with each other through a ship-wide network. If something happens to the leaders during your test, that information will spread to every ship in their fleet." John nodded, understanding the importance of what she was saying. This wasn't just about his survival anymore. It could affect all humans. MyVTalk led John back through the hallways, moving quickly and checking for guards at each turn. As they approached John's cell, the alarm stopped and the lights returned to white. "We must hurry," MyVTalk said. That they reached John's cell, just as sounds of approaching guards echoed down the hallway. Before entering, John turned to the alien. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. MyVTalk's red eyes seemed to dim slightly. "My species conquered many worlds before yours. Each time we destroyed something beautiful. I have read your books, heard your music. Some things should not be broken." The guard's footsteps grew louder. "Go," MyVTalk said, pushing John gently into the cell. "Tomorrow they will take you for the final test. Remember what Susan told you?" The door slid shut just as guards rounded the corner. John watched through the small window as MyVTalk pretended to be inspecting the door panel. The guards passed. Without stopping, John sat on his bed, thinking about everything he had learned, the neural link, the emotional weakness of the Kurzak, the chance to send a message to their entire fleet. For the first time since his capture, John allowed himself to feel something beyond mere survival. He felt purpose. If Susan was right, The very emotions the aliens thought made humans weak could be their strongest weapon. That night, John removed the tiny metal disc from his false tooth. He held it in his palm, pressing the small button on its surface. Amy's voice filled his cell, barely louder than a whisper. "I believe in you, Dad. You're the strongest person I know." John played the message 3 times, memorizing every inflection, every pause. Tomorrow, when they connected their minds to his, he would show the aliens exactly what human strength really meant. Not the ability to endure pain, but the power to feel deeply, to love fiercely, to hope beyond reason, and even to forgive those who cause suffering. The aliens thought they would break him. Instead, John would show them what it truly meant to be human. The guards came for John early. 4 of them this time, not the usual 2. They surrounded him as they walked, keeping their shock rods pointed at him. John noticed their movements seemed tense, almost nervous. Word had spread about the human who wouldn't break. They led him to a new room, larger than any he had seen before on the ship. The ceiling rose high above, and the walls curved in a circle. In the center stood a raised platform with a single chair. Around the platform, 7 tall chairs formed a ring. The room looked like a court or a theater. Commander Vexler waited on the platform, standing beside the central chair. Lieutenant Kivra worked at a control panel nearby. When John entered, Vexler gestured to the chair. "Sit, human subject," the commander said. "Today is an important day for science." John walked slowly to the chair, taking in every detail of the room. Susan had warned him about this test. The neural link. The alien leaders watching. He needed to be ready. As he sat in the chair, restraints automatically closed around his wrists and ankles. A metal band wrapped around his chest, holding him firmly in place. John didn't resist. He needed to save his strength for what was coming. "You have proven remarkably resilient," Vexler said, circling the chair. "Your physical and psychological responses defy our predictions. The High Council is most interested in your case." The door opened, and 7 Kozak entered the room. They were taller than Vexler, their black shells decorated with red and gold markings. Each alien took a place in one of the tall chairs surrounding the platform. "The ship commanders have gathered to witness this final experiment," Vexler explained. "They represent our 7 battle fleets currently orbiting your world." John looked at each alien commander. Their red glass eyes stared back at him, studying him like he was an interesting insect. He met each gaze without fear. "What you have endured so far has been merely preparation," Vexler continued. "Today we will use our most advanced technology to understand the human mind completely." Kivra approached, carrying a silver device that looked like a crown. It had thin wires extending from its rim, each ending in a small disc. John recognized it from Susan's description, the neural link. "This device will create a direct connection between your mind and ours," Vexler said. "We will experience your emotions as you experience them. Every fear, every pain, every thought will be shared. Nothing will remain hidden." John kept his face calm, but his mind raced. This was the moment Susan had prepared him for. The moment when the aliens' lack of emotional complexity might become their weakness. Kivra placed the crown on John's head. The small discs attached themselves to his skin, sending a cold sensation across his scalp. A similar larger device lowered from the ceiling, positioning itself above Vexler's head. 7 more devices descended above each of the commanders. "Begin the link," Vexler ordered. Kivra pressed a sequence of controls. The devices hummed to life. John felt a strange pressure in his mind, like someone pushing against a door in his thoughts. He didn't fight it. Instead, he closed his eyes and focused on what mattered most to him. He thought of Amy, her smile, her laugh, the way she looked up to him. The love he felt for his daughter flowed through him, pure and powerful. Not just simple affection, but the complex tapestry of parental love, pride, hope, worry, joy, all woven together into something greater than the sum of its parts. A strange sound filled the room, a high-pitched keening from one of the alien commanders. John opened his eyes to see the alien clutching at its head, its body trembling. "Continue," Vexler ordered, though his voice wavered slightly. John closed his eyes again. He thought of Earth, not just his home, but all of humanity. People helping each other after the invasion, strangers sharing food, children playing despite the alien ships overhead. The hope that persisted even in darkness. Hope not as a simple feeling, but as a complex act of defiance against despair. Another sound this time, a series of sharp clicks from a different commander. When John looked, the alien was slumped in its chair, its red eyes flickering. Vexler stepped forward, his movements less certain now. "You are attempting to resist. It will not work." "I'm not resisting," John said calmly. "I'm showing you what you wanted to see. This is what it means to be human." John thought of the people who had helped him in his life. His army friends who saved him during war. Neighbors who supported him when Amy's mother died. Even Mivtok and Susan here on the ship. He let gratitude fill his mind, not simple thanks, but the deep appreciation that connects one being to another. More sounds of distress came from the commanders. 3 were now trembling in their chairs. 1 had fallen to the floor. Vexler himself was shaking, his hands grasping at the control panel for support. "Stop the link!" Kivra cried out, her translator barely working through her distress. "Their neural patterns are destabilizing." But it was too late. The link was complete. John focused on one final emotion, the most complex, the most human of all: forgiveness. He thought about the aliens who had tortured him, who had tried to break him. And in his mind he forgave them. Not because they deserved it, but because forgiveness freed him from hatred. It was a choice, an act of will that transformed pain into something else. The effect was immediate. All 7 commanders cried out. At once, a sound unlike anything John had heard before. It wasn't pain exactly. It was confusion, wonder, fear all mixed together. Vexler fell to his knees beside John's chair, the neural device still connected to his head. "What is this?" Vexler gasped. "These feelings, they are too much, too complex." "How do you bear it?" John looked down at the alien commander. "It's not a weakness," he said quietly. "It's our strength. This is why humans will never truly be conquered. You can take our world, but you cannot take what makes us human." Alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Kivra was frantically working at the controls. "The commander's distress signals are spreading through the network," she cried. "All ships are receiving their neural readings. The fleet is in confusion." The restraints on John's chair suddenly released. He looked up to see Mivtok at the control panel across the room. The small alien nodded once, then slipped away through a side door. John stood up, removing the neural crown from his head. All around him, the alien commanders were in various states of collapse. Some twitched on the floor. Others sat frozen in their chairs, red eyes flickering. Vexler remained on his knees, looking up at John with what might have been fear. "What have you done to us?" the commander asked. John looked around at the chaos his mind had created. "I showed you the truth," he said. "You thought emotions made us weak. Now you know better." He stepped off the platform, walking past the fallen commanders. None of the guards tried to stop him. They stood at the edges of the room, watching in confusion as the human who was supposed to break instead broke their leaders. John walked to the door, free for the first time since his capture. Behind him, Vexler called out one last question. "How? How do humans contain such complexity without breaking?" John paused at the doorway. "We don't contain it," he said. "We embrace it. That's what you never understood." Then he stepped through the door, heading toward the section where Susan was held. It was time to free the other human. And after that, somehow, they would find a way home. Because if there was one thing John Miller had in abundance, it was hope. The ship was in chaos. Alarms blared throughout the corridors as John made his way to Susan's cell. Kurzak ran in all directions, some shouting orders that no one followed, others simply standing still as if confused. None tried to stop John. Many actually moved away when they saw him, their red eyes dimming as they pressed against the walls to let him pass. John found Susan's cell and pressed the symbols on the door panel the way he had seen Mivtok do. Nothing happened. He tried again, pressing different combinations, but the door remained locked. "Step aside," said a voice behind him. John turned to see Mivtok holding a small device. The alien pressed it against the door panel, and the cell opened immediately. Susan stood inside, ready. She had heard the alarms. "It worked," she said, looking at John with wide eyes. "You broke them." "We need to leave," John said. "Can we get to an escape pod?" Mivtok nodded. "This way." "But we must hurry. The confusion will not last forever." They followed the small alien through the ship, moving quickly but carefully. Throughout the vessel, screens on walls showed images of other Kurzak ships. Some appeared to be moving away from Earth, others drifted aimlessly. The neural link had transmitted John's emotions to commanders across the fleet, and the effect was spreading. What exactly happened in there? Susan asked as they ran. Their minds couldn't handle it, John explained. All the complex emotions at once, love, hope, forgiveness. It was too much for them. The Kurzak evolved as predators, Mivtok added. Simple, direct emotions served them well: anger for fighting, fear for fleeing, dominance for leading. They never developed the neural pathways for emotional complexity. Your mind overwhelmed their systems. They reached a small bay with 5 oval-shaped pods attached to the wall. Mivtok went to a control panel and began entering commands. "Each pod can return to Earth automatically," the alien explained. "I am programming the coordinates now." Group of Kurzak guards appeared at the entrance to the bay, shock rods raised. They hesitated when they saw John, clearly uncertain. "Stop them," ordered a voice from behind the guards. Commander Vexler pushed through, moving unsteadily. The neural crown was gone, but the commander's red eyes flickered erratically. "The human subjects cannot leave." Mivtok stepped forward, placing himself between the humans and the other aliens. "It is over, Commander. The experiment has failed. We were wrong about the humans." "Traitor!" Vexler hissed. "You have betrayed your species." "I have recognized truth," Mivtok replied calmly. "Something you refuse to see?" Vexler raised a weapon, not a shock rod, but something that glowed with energy. Before he could fire, one of the guards reached out and gripped the commander's arm. "Sir," the guard said, "the High Council has issued new orders. All experiments are to cease. All human subjects are to be released." Vexler stared at the guard in shock. "What? When?" "Just now," the guard said. "The neural data from the commanders has been analyzed. The Council has determined that continued contact with humans poses a risk to Kurzak mental stability." Vexler's arm lowered slowly. The commander looked at John, those red glass eyes studying him one last time. "What are you?" Vexler asked. Quietly, "Just human," John answered. "Nothing more, nothing less." Vexler seemed to consider this for a moment, then turned and walked away without another word. The guards followed, leaving John, Susan, and Mivtok alone in the pod bay. "We must go quickly," Mivtok said, returning to the control panel. "The pods are ready. You're coming with us?" Susan asked. Mivtok's head moved in that not-quite nod. "My place is no longer here. I wish to learn more about humans, about your music and stories, if you will allow it." John placed a hand on the alien's shoulder, the first time he had willingly touched one of them. "Of course." They entered the largest pod, which had seats for all 3 of them. Mivtok pressed a sequence of controls, and the pod detached from the wall with a soft hiss. It moved smoothly through an opening that appeared in the hull, then out into space, through the pod's window. They could see the massive Kurzak mothership growing smaller behind them. Beyond it, dozens of other alien vessels hung in Earth's orbit. Some were already moving away, engines glowing as they prepared to leave. "They're retreating," Susan said in disbelief. "Yes," Mivtok confirmed. "The neural data from your mind has spread throughout our network. Many Kurzak are experiencing what they call emotional sickness, confusion, uncertainty, questions about our way of life. The High Council fears it will weaken us as a species. Will it?" John asked. Mivtok was quiet for a moment. "I believe it will change us. Whether that is weakness or strength depends on what we become after the change." The pod accelerated toward Earth, entering the atmosphere in a streak of light. Below them, the blue and green of the planet grew larger. John felt a tightness in his chest, the simple joy of seeing home again. "What will happen now?" Susan asked. "Will they come back?" "No," Mivtok said with certainty. "The Kurzak conquer what they understand. They do not understand humans. You are the first species to defeat us without weapons." The pod systems beeped, indicating they were approaching the landing site, a field outside a small town that John recognized as not far from his home. "They tried to break me," John said, watching the ground grow closer. "They never understood that what they saw as our weakness, our emotions, our complexity was actually our strength. Your mind was a weapon more powerful than any technology." Mivtok agreed. One human's emotional depth defeated an entire fleet. The pod touched down gently in the field. The door opened, letting in fresh air and sunlight. John stepped out first, feeling earth beneath his feet again. In the distance, he could see people running toward them, drawn by the pod's descent. "Will your people accept me?" Mivtok asked, hesitating at the pod's door. John smiled. "That's another thing about humans. We're complicated. Some will fear you, others will welcome you. But you'll get a chance to find out for yourself." Together, the three of them walked toward the approaching humans. Above them, the sky was clearing as alien ships disappeared one by one into the depths of space. The Kurzak had come to Earth believing they would conquer. They left understanding that some things cannot be conquered by force. They had tried to break the human, to prove that emotional complexity was weakness. Instead, they discovered it was humanity's greatest power, one that could make even the conquerors cry out in wonder and fear. 2 months later, John sat on his front porch watching Amy play in the yard. She had adapted quickly to having her father back, and even to having an alien visitor who was fascinated by everything from butterflies to bicycle rides. Mivtok sat beside John, observing Amy with those red glass eyes that somehow seemed warmer now. "I still do not fully understand," the alien said quietly. "How do you balance such complex emotions without breaking?" John smiled, watching his daughter laugh as she chased a butterfly. "We don't always manage it. We break sometimes. We feel too much, hurt too deeply. But then we heal, and those broken places make us stronger, more compassionate." "The Kurzak will return someday," Mivtok said, "not as conquerors but as students. Your planet has something we need more than resources or territory." "What's that?" John asked. Mivtok looked up at the blue sky where his people had disappeared. "Lessons in what it means to truly live."